But teacher notices that he has been avoiding doing any damage to his summoner and tried to attack the fugly bastard, which forces the demon to take one for the team. Our duo remembers that if they slay the dungeon master, everything he created will disappear, and starts to give him all the smoke that they can muster to bring him down. But even giving it their all, teacher realizes that this won't be enough and makes a plan to send the demon back to hell. Fran charges at the monster while evading all his attempts to end the series until she sees an opening when he charges his next attack. Our furry throws her honage while launching fireballs at the demon so they can attack the dungeon master from 2 directions at once. Daddy Demon attempts to blow away the sword, but this is when teacher changes targets and head right towards him to put a brand new glory hole in his chest. The demon shows that his grip game is unmatched, however Swordcoin starts using all his power to thrust deeper inside him until he manages to penetrate Daddy Demon to bring this fight to an end. Teacher falls to the floor and breaks from all the stress while Franz goes over to mourn the loss of her master. But it's revealed that he's totally fine and just needs time to heal. The dungeon master foolishly reminds them that she exists, so of course our favorite psychopath goes over to end his subscription to life. He reveals that with his armband he will always revive, but Fran disarms him and takes the item for herself. Then the weak-ass dungeon master passes away from the shock of losing an arm. Sensing that the master is gone, the dungeon begins to collapse and reverts to a normal ruin. Our duo starts celebrating clearing their first dungeon as the rest of the party finally arrives on the scene. They begin questioning our cat girl about what happened and realizes that she defeated the B-class demon on her own. Donadron congratulates the little psychopath for slaying the raid boss before he punishes her for going off on a solo mission by forcing her to cosplay as an empty ketchup bottle. After the raid, we find Fran walking away from the dungeon while being very pissed off because teacher just watched as her head was becoming a milkshake, but he quickly appeases our little monster with promises to make some curry for her to eat when they get home. Teacher begins discussing what skills to level up, and they decide to put their points into swordsmanship to unlock elemental blade while using the rest to upgrade Daddy Demon's skill taker, which Fran wants to test out immediately on Donadron, but teacher manages to talk our little psychopath out of activating friendly fire. In the night, our duo has a meeting with the guild master, who begins praising Fran for saving many lives and giving them the demon's body to use for material, but he has questions about what happened to the mana crystal. Our furry tells him it was destroyed in the fight, so he decides to accept this as the truth. Suddenly, a facially deficient man enters the room and begins accusing our cat girl of being deceptive. Lieutenant Buttface reveals that his unique skill gives him the ability to see through lies, and tells Clement that anything Fran says should not be believed. However, teacher begins to get suspicious and uses Identify to look at all his skills, where he realizes that the big bastard's unique ability is gaslighting, which allows him to make other people suspect that someone else is lying even if they're telling the truth. Fran and teacher decides to activate the unseen hands to reach deep inside his special place to take both his gaslighting and noble adequate skills away from him. Then our favorite psychopath immediately begins gaslighting the fugly bastard, who begins freaking out until he decides to run away from the guild house in terror. Clement apologizes for the way the unfortunately shaped fellow acted and explains that because he is a powerful noble, she should be wary of him in the future. The guild master thanks Fran for everything she's done and announces that from this point onwards she will be upgraded to a rank D adventurer, so our favorite cat girl uses her noble adequate skill to show them true appreciation. Our duo heads to the main entrance, where Mel gives them their reward for clearing the dungeon, and all the other adventurers begin praising our furry for saving them from a one-way ticket to the gates of heaven, so she decides to throw one hell of a party to toast her success. After all the celebrations, our duo decides to get some sleep, and for the first time teacher has a dream of when he met with the goddesses and they forged his soul into a legendary weapon. Swordcoin awakens in the middle of the forest on Fran's back, and our duo decides to go out on as many missions as possible to gain experience that allows them to raise their adventurer rank while giving them more crystals to upgrade their skills. Later on, our party returns to the kingdom, but the guard stops Fran at the gates and warns her that Lieutenant Buttface has been looking for a cat girl because he blames her for his new illness. They begin walking through the city and teacher immediately realizes that Fran is being followed, so our furry chooses to lead the stalkers to a place where there are no witnesses. A mega-evolved Lieutenant Buttface reveals that he is the weirdo that's been pursuing them and begins blaming Fran for the horrific state he's in, but Fran uses the gaslighting skill to convince the freak of nature that she doesn't know him, which almost works until the poor bastard uses all of his power to summon his last 2 brain cells and figures out that she is the only black cat in the city who wields a big-ass sword. Realizing that her plan failed, Fran decides to end him, but Führer Ugly calls down an assassin he hired to fight against our favorite cat girl. Upon seeing him, fear strikes deep into Fran's heart as she reveals that blue cats are the black cat's main ops, because in the past the blue cats betrayed her people and sold them all into work without pay. Our little furry is terrified to fight against this enemy as the assassin walks right by her while taunting his newest prey. She manages to block a backshot, but he easily overpowers her and kicks our cat girl into the wall. The blue cat walks over to his defeated foe, then begins telling her that the last black cat that fought back, he ended up slowly cutting her into little pieces before doing the same to her daughter, and after he was done he mercilessly fed their bodies to the dogs. Fran is petrified by fear until teacher reminds her that she is no longer a worker without pay but an adventurer who defeated a greater demon. Our furry begins to make a stand against the blue cat and questions how many of her people has he sent to the afterlife, but he admits that he lost count long ago. Fran reminds us how terrifying she is and uses Flash Step to disarm the poor bastard and steals his sword in case it comes in handy. The assassin has forked around and Fran decides it's time for him to find out, so she goes over to slowly take his body apart until the blue cat has as much limbs as the worm he is. Teacher tells our furry that he will finish off the freshly made snake. However, she refuses because this won't be the last time that our cat girl will have to defend her people from the darkness of this world. Fran uses teacher to deep throat her newest victim and ends his pitiful life, when Lieutenant Buttface reminds her that there is still work left to do. Our psychopath decides to up her KD, but a spirit suddenly appears to beg Fran to spare him. Then she leaves the unfortunately featured goblin behind and follows the light all the way to the guild master's room. Clement informs them that the fugly bastard is already wanted for multiple crimes and is to be arrested as a noble so he can get life in the cheeks taker. Our duo finds his fate fitting and decides to leave, but they get hit with a double serving of unfiltered happiness. The woman tries to help Fran up, but she notices that our cat girl is very cute and shoves her face straight into heaven while begging Fran to call her mommy. Our furry gently refuses her kind offer and tries her best to escape, but the guild master interrupts to explain that this very normal lady is a rank A adventurer called Amanda who has been away to investigate the disturbances that teacher made in the forest. The next day, our little Fran coincidentally finds the busty elf following her everywhere she goes like a horror movie villain. The cat girl kindly asks her to stop, but Fran's stalker is very persistent and continues to chase after her. Our favorite furry goes to the Adventurers Guild to complain that Amanda is hunting her down. However, Mel reveals that the big-chested elf woman once owned an orphanage and was given the divine title of protector of children by the gods, so she won't do anything to hurt Fran despite her psychotic behaviors. Amanda appears behind Mel to tell Fran that their meetings throughout the day were totally a coincidence, and when our cat girl is ready she can call her mommy. Then Mel saves our furry by revealing that the guild master has a special quest for her. Fran enters Clement's office, where he offers her some of the crystals from his own storage if she participates in an upcoming dungeon raid. Fran says she'll do it for 10 crystals, but Clement counters with 3. She threatens to walk away, so the guild master agrees to 5 and successfully got robbed by a child. Our catgirl questions why he wants her on this mission, and he explains that people have been arguing that Fran has ranked up too fast, while wondering if he went to Epstein's Island, so after she performs well in front of everyone, they can beat the allegations. Our furry agrees to go as the door suddenly has an accident while Amanda is walking in to tell them that she will also be going on this mission with Fran. The next day, our catgirl arrives at the meetup point of the raid where the kinky elf introduces Fran to her stress relievers. All the party leaders begin to introduce their teammates who will be participating in this mission, but after Fran finishes telling them about herself, Crad immediately accuses her of doing favors for the guild master to rank up. But Amanda gently disciplines the poor bastard until he apologizes and begs for his life, then she allows him to continue breathing. The raid begins with all the party members traveling through the forest, and after a day of walking they arrive at the opening of the dungeon, but because it's too late the party decides to enter tomorrow. At the campsite, they decide that Fran will take the first watch, so she goes over to begin her duty. Crad comes over to question if someone who fakes her rank can actually watch their backs while they sleep and draws his body impaler to challenge her to a duel to see if she's the real deal. Our catgirl decides to be the bigger person and ignore him until Crad makes the mistake of insulting teacher, which awakens the psychopath that was sleeping within, so she accepts the battle. They go into the middle of the camp, where Fran starts off by using a wind and earth spell so she can continue to watch the area while turning her future victim into a punching bag. Our catgirl draws teacher, so Crad charges at her, but all his blows get easily deflected by our monster. She flash steps to get behind him and he continues his attack, which she effortlessly weaves while trapping his long shaft with sword koan, right before introducing her foot to his face and bringing this fight to an end. Our little psychopath realizes he can still stand, so she begins beating him with teacher until Crad's teammates drags his broken body away. Then Amanda comes over to Fran and asks if she can also fight her since she would like a workout, and Fran agrees under the condition that if she wins the rank it will stop stalking her, but Amanda counters by saying that if she beats her, Fran has to call her mommy. They return to the center of the camp where Fran draws teacher again and Amanda lets down her people corrector. The battle begins with Fran barely managing to dodge an onslaught of the A-rank's attacks and struggles to even get close enough to use sword koan, but our brilliant catgirl improvises with a wall jump to rush towards her opponent. However, the busty elf calls back her weapon to force Fran to land on the ground. She gets close enough to use her honage, but Amanda easily pushes her back out of range. The kinky elf begins pouring mana into her weapon until it begins moving on its own. Then the protector of children immediately tries to blow Fran's mind, but our favorite catgirl is far too agile for Amanda to land any solid attacks against her. Our duo realizes that if it continues this way they will lose to the power of the A rank, so Fran decides to end this fight and use wind magic to buff her speed, as well as activating split mind to cast 2 spells at once while rushing towards Amanda. The busty elf decides to finish the fight and lands a devastating blow on Fran, but our MC is one tough kitty, so she uses wind magic to close the distance on her opponent, but when she gets close Amanda unleashes a wind shield that effortlessly blows Fran into the sky, and after taking the higher ground our catgirl baits the A rank and in fireball straight from the gates of hell. Our favorite furry remains barely conscious as Amanda walks out of the flames without taking any damage from the attack. Fran stands to continue the fight but immediately falls into sleep mode, so the waifu elf rushes over to help by feeding her potions. Crad realizes that both the women are monsters as the other party members begin putting out the fire. Our catgirl sleeps on Amanda's stress relievers while remembering her mother when she was a child. Fran awakens and the busty elf tells her to rest since she exhausted herself, but reminds Fran about the deal they made before the fight. Our little furry tries her best to call Amanda mommy, but in the end the A rank stops her because it's clear that Fran already had a mother that she still loves dearly. The next day, our raid party gets ready to enter the dungeon and the party leader opens the doors so the expedition can begin. Our group goes inside and encounters a giant ruin, so they form teams to explore a larger area. Crad realizes that there are monsters nearby and a cluster of giant spiders begins to surround our raid party. They begin to fight against the monsters and easily sends all of them on a one-way trip to meet Spider Jesus. They go down to floor 2 where they continue their genocide of every living thing they can find in the dungeon, while Fran asks Amanda to explain the difference between arts and magic, so the A rank says that arts are attacks strengthened by mana, which people obtain by practicing relentlessly until they receive a technique through divine intervention. Our raid party goes down to floor 3 where they decide to rest, but many teammates accidentally activate traps that start to hurt most of our party members, some way more than others. Amanda continues her explanation by revealing that skills are divine gifts that the world gives people when their souls are compatible enough to use them, while magic is performed by manipulating one of the 4 mana elements outside of the body, and to improve with an element someone has to become so close with it that the element will appear in their dreams. But once someone has become very compatible with 2 elements, the user is able to combine them and use an attack much stronger than any one element can produce on their own. They go down to floor 4 where our party decides to rest since monsters won't attack them there, and the A rank finishes off her lessons by explaining that there are also dark and light magic which can do things like heal or even summon beasts along with unique spells that only monsters can use. Fran tells teacher that she wants to combine fire and wind to make thunder magic, and after convincing him with her catgirl Riz, he gives in and maxes out their spells until they unlock the power of thunder. Our raid party continues down to floor 5 and proceeds to slaughter all the innocent monsters they find hiding in their homes, until their teammate successfully disarms all the traps he can find. They go down to the final floor where they meet even more animal trying to protect their families and gives them a one-way ticket to the gates of Spider Hell, but they realize that their teammates are beginning to faint, and after teacher uses identify it's revealed that these spiders contain very lethal poisons. Fran rushes to heal her teammate and the party leader signals everyone to retreat towards the 5th floor. Then he asks our cat girl along with Amanda to begin participating in their favorite activity while the rest escapes to safety. 2 of our teammates starts running around because they're confused by the toxins and accidentally knocks Fran into a room where a magic spell suddenly activates and teleport our catgirl away while leaving her items behind. The trap specialist checks his map to locate where they should be, so our party rushes to the room but find no one inside of it. Amanda explains that the only way this can happen is if a dungeon master has appeared in form of the trickster spider. Teacher begins using all his skills to track her down, but he can't seem to find her and he's unable to search himself since he must appear as a regular weapon. The party leader decides that they will split up into 3 groups to search for their missing allies and leaves the well-endowed elf to search on her own. The A rank casts a wind spell to hear all the sounds inside the dungeon, but the spiders crawling are the only thing that she can make out. While teacher searches through all his skills to find one that can help him detect Fran until he sees the summoning spell he got from the insect queen. He begins looking through all his potential summons until he finds one with the skill to detect creatures, so he decides to use all his mana to summon an onyx wolf from the void. Teacher asks the monster to find Fran, but instead it jumps back and begins to launch a flurry of attacks at Sword Coin to blow him away. Amanda goes to end its existence, but he stops her by explaining that he is a friend of our favorite catgirl and needs the wolf to find her. Teacher realizes that because he used all his mana to summon his minion, its body is overloaded with magic, which makes it seize the summoner as a threat because it was created in an existence of immense pain. Amanda comes in clutch to explain that when an item or summon is named, that action normally strengthens their bonds and could make the monster strong enough to contain all its power. Teacher decides to name the monster Jet, and it immediately begins to fix the mana core as it evolves into a very good boy. Swordcoin commands Jet to find Fran, and after taking a quick sniff he immediately locks onto her scent, before he begins running to her location as fast as possible. We head over to Fran, who has been stripped of all of her powers and is now feeling like the person she was before Teacher came along. She looks over to see her teammates about to be eaten alive and fades into the dreamland where she sees a vision of Teacher appear before her eyes to tell our favorite catgirl that she must not fear because fear is the mind killer. Fran begins pulling her teammates out of the mountain of spiders and then slaughters as much little ones as possible right in front of their mother until she begins getting exhausted from all the poisons in her body, but she uses pain to overcome the numbness and stands up to announce that she is an adventurer that will be the first black cat ever to evolve. The heavenly shaped monster begins attacking our catgirl and knocks her to the floor, but Fran starts standing once more only to face another onslaught of attacks from the spider with tits. our cat girl rises again, then starts running towards what will surely be a trip to the afterlife while announcing that she is teacher's pupil. And when Fran needs him most, Sword Coin appears on the battlefield and penetrates deep inside the spider MILF. Teacher immediately goes to check on our little cat girl and uses his healing magic to bring her back to full health. Fran grabs Sword Coin while he's still hot and embraces him in a hug of pure happiness, but when Amanda catches up, she tackles our cat girl to the floor, then tells her about how concerned she has been. Fran sees Jet for the first time, and our little doggy shows that he's a very good boy, so of course she has to pet him. Amanda comes over to question why Teacher is a talking sword, and seeing how close the three of them have all become, they decide to reveal everything to her, which makes the busty elf begins freaking out because this means Fran will always have someone by her side and will be protected from danger. They decide to meet up with their party and heal their two teammates to save them from becoming hashtags. However, the rank it goes to ask if they remember what happened, but thankfully the two of them passed out before Teacher came, so she doesn't have to beat the memories out of them. Our party returns to the upper floor but finds no one waiting for them to come back, when suddenly a white owl appears to tell them that their other teammates are in danger. We go over to see that they are fighting for their lives in a battle against the spiders, but they are slowly being overwhelmed by their numbers. The monster activates their trap card to summon a boulder to the battlefield, but before they transform into paint, it explodes into pieces as Fran's group arrives to fight alongside them. Jet continues the family tradition of slaughtering defenseless animals, but Fran and Teacher refuse to be outdone at their own game. Meanwhile, the guardian spirit goes over to the elf to tell him that he brought help. Our duo sees that the sylph is up ahead controlling her children, but upon seeing them, the monster begins squirting sticky white fluids all over itself to form a shield. Fran easily destroys it with a full power fire blast, then hops on Jet to finish it off. The Busta Spider begins using her little ones as meat shields so she can escape, but Fran unleashes thunder magic for the first time and lands a critical blow against their opponent, paralyzing it in the process. The sylph launches a desperate attack that manages to injure our cat girl, and seeing this, Amanda remembers back when Fran's parents decided to become adventurers but passed away because they weren't strong enough to survive, so she decides that none of her children will ever come to harm in front of her again and unleashes storm magic at the monster to make the curvaceous creature past tense, before going over to embrace Fran, but our psychopath wanted to smoke it herself. Our party leader finds the path to the treasury and heads down to find materials beyond their wildest dreams and begin collecting all the crystals that can fit in their bags. Crad goes over to our cat girl and thanks her for saving everyone's life. However, Fran gives him a haircut while saving him from a sneaky spider, so he decides to continue their rivalry until the ends of time. The next day, our party members arrive back to the city after victoriously completing their dungeon raid. Fran goes to the guild master to report on everything that happened, and he congratulates her for what she was able to accomplish, then announces that they have successfully beaten all the allegations. Our cat girl goes to the class change room with Mel and ranks up to become a battle mage before heading to the blacksmith's shop. He gives Fran some new drip made of named equipment, which gives her the blessing of the black cat from the god of beasts that allows our furry to survive any attacks that would instantly reunite the cat girl with her parents. Gurus questions where they will be going next, and our duo reveals that they will be taking on a dungeon near the next city. The blacksmith tells them that he'll also be heading there so they can seek him out when they need more equipment once they arrive. The next day, Fran decides to leave the city with everyone she has met up to this point, wishing her farewell and giving her advice on how to stay safe on her adventure. Our cat girl tells Amanda that the next time they meet she will win their duel, and the A rank goes over to tell Teacher to look after her while she's away. Fran gets ready to leave, but before they go she turns around to call the busty elf mommy for the first time, which reminds her of when Fran's parents first left her orphanage, then came back with their child to introduce to their mother. Fran and Teacher begins running off to their next adventure, with Amanda realizing that her parents would be proud of everything she has accomplished.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.